Hey everybody, I am your Misfits DM here, and tonight I am bringing Chris back from Dungeon Studios to talk about dragons. So please make sure if you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up or give me a bump in the chat so we can know that our audio is good to go. Chris, welcome back as normal. We are here in the tavern. We're going to sit here. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk this new book coming out called Fizban's Treasury of Dragons and all the spectacle that's going on around it, as well as any questions that people have of how to incorporate your dragons, how to um, play dragons in a campaign, and any sort of neat little stories that you might have lingering around. So, as we normally do here in the tavern, we just kind of chill out, hang out, and throw all your questions at us. But Chris, before we start, what's the most exciting thing about dragons to you?
I just the fact that they are so magical in essence and that they are more than just this mindless monster that's going to slash at you and bite. This is a very intelligent creature and there is so much potential with storytelling around dragons. It's amazing. The potential is limitless, and now it's with this book coming out, it's going to be expanding even more, and I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, no, this book is going to blow anybody who loves dragons. I personally, if you didn't come see me last week, I love dragons. One of my favorite creatures ever. It's what actually got me into collaborative storytelling. I originally started collaborative storytelling during a Dragon Riders of Pern um, writing assignment at the time, and just kind of grew from there. I actually have a red dragon. I still remember him. I was 8 years old, and it was given to me because in the Pern series, you are handed a dragon, and his name was Yrath, Yrath, and he was my buddy. And then when you're 10 years old, that was your best friend at the time, right? It's either
Oh
that or,
yeah, for sure.
it's either that or your dog. So, because a lot of us, we didn't have a lot of friends. We just kind of hung out, did our thing, and wrote stories. So most ancient dragons have 20 int, such wonderful creatures. Yeah, definitely. I think we're actually going to see crazy things come out of this book that is going to push that int from 20 beyond. So there is talk, and anything I say here, of course, is speculation. I don't have the book. I have no idea what they're saying. These are only things that I'm reading off the internet and through YouTube. But there is talk of things called ancient silver worms, and these things are supposed to be super intelligent, multi-dimensional, um,
Almost omnipresent.
yeah, like broken to the beyond point of view. We're closing in on divinity, which they're also going to have a conversation, and the lore is supposed to come out on the trueness of the the first war, which was where Tiamat and Bahamut are created, and how that is all done and what that looks like. Um, but something
Which
nifty about
very
this
exciting.
book is they don't want you to play in their world. And this is my excitement, right? As a game master, we're reading through stuff in settings like this, and we're like, okay, so they want us to play in their world. This book is going to throw that completely upside down. Everything that is, from what I'm reading, everything in this book is about how to bring dragons and giving you as many ideas as possible of how to blend them, make them your own, take some pieces of them and throw away others to put into your world. So that to me as a game master is probably the most exciting thing I saw so far. Um,
I think they're really waking up and seeing the that more often than not, people are doing homebrew and
yeah,
not doing campaign settings.
and they talk about it in a lot of the YouTube videos, even to the point where people are customizing monsters more often, and they're not customizing them the way that they suggest in the book. They are putting way bigger spins on it, or they're taking a monster that's higher CR and they're changing the species of it and giving it new things. and I think this is just going to be that unlock for the dragon portion of that. Um, some of the other cool things that we're seeing in the book, and I'm just going through kind of some of the things that I've read over the last couple days now, is we're going to actually get to find out what the different types of dragon turtles, like what the sizes and the ages of these things. Because personally, for me, I don't remember any time where a dragon turtle wasn't just scary.
Oh yeah.
you know?
Like for me, my first introduction, because I'm new to D&D, so my first introduction to the concept of a dragon turtle is from the Avatar series. And when I say Avatar, just to be very clear, the only Avatar series that counts, The Last Airbender, not the Blue People. Let's just stay away from that entirely. But yeah, no, this this idea I think is really great. I remember the first time when I opened up a D&D book and saw one of the dragon turtles they had, I loved it. I fell in love. Just the idea of a turtle slash dragon is insane. I'm like, what the AC that's got to be on that thing. Whew. Uh, but yeah, no, it's really cool. I would like to see a little bit more on them, especially if we can get some that are very much like. If you remember, I don't know, were you an Avatar guy at all,
I
or
wasn't. I wasn't. I've watched bits and pieces of it. I've never had enough time and energy to sit through the entire series. Now, just a quick shout out to that one because this was an incredible thing. So, in under 7 days, they hit $1 million on the Kickstarter backing for Avatar the Airbender, or yeah, Avatar role playing game. So, kudos to them. That's an awesome feat to achieve, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. So, and,
and that goes to show you too, because that's all homebrew, right? So it
right.
just goes to show how like the homebrew is the thing right now,
Yeah.
and D&D is waking up to that. That's like that's why they have the UA, right?
Yeah.
They have it so you create this content for them, they can do surveys, and then they can they can make it official. And
Yeah.
like this new book seems to be fitting the tone of Tasha's, in the sense that they're really encouraging homebrew.
Oh, I
And I
completely agree
love that.
there. I think that really they're stepping into this new idea and the idea of the storyteller, um, and the idea that the game doesn't have to always be following the rails of old school D&D. And why I say that is because we have worlds that have been built for years and years and years and years and years that a lot of people know, but a lot of people don't. And with the new upcoming people that are coming into D&D, they haven't been reading for the last 20 years the Forgotten Realms series or, the Dragonlance series or any of these big uh, world building um, book series that have then been kind of developed into Dungeons and Dragons. And I really think that this allows them to kind of break away from that and pushes
Well,
that
I think
creativity a lot more.
I feel like with the lore aspect that they're adding to this book, this might be actually to me a sign that they're going to be going back to some of their roots with future material. Having this having the whole part of like, well, Fizban, he's in the Dragonlance
Yeah,
series. If you guys aren't familiar with Fizban, I haven't read the book, but I have read a little bit on his character. He sounds amazing. A quirky wizard who often forgets his spells.
yeah,
So that concept is like, I really like that. Um, which is another thing that's great because he's also an avatar to a dragon. So it's like, that's another thing when you were asking earlier. Well, what's exciting about this? What's exciting about dragons is it's just you can make them into such characters and make them so fun, and
right.
I think they're great.
Now,
Um,
don't get me wrong. Do not think, especially in our show here, but don't in any show, don't get me wrong. There are places for those books. If you want good world building skill, you want to learn how to world build to the max. Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms. You want to learn how to write characters that feel real, and you have whole like years and years and years and years of backstory and have lineage and all this stuff. They're great books to read, but I think Dungeons and Dragons being the collaborative storytelling in the collaborative book that in the collaborative world that it is, that people are moving farther and farther away from it because they don't know those stories. They didn't grow up with them. They've got new ideas and new things coming out. I'm still surprised we haven't seen anything that's in the Harry Potter world to this level yet. I mean, with it being the
Well, they're
big new thing.
they might
So
be doing that with MTGs, so it's only a matter of time.
right, yeah.
Uh,
So we've got the Magic the Gathering game is slowly starting to incorporate D&D, and it's now, I guess you wouldn't say slowly at this point. It's engulfed in D&D.
yeah,
Um,
Xanathar is a card. Let's
yeah,
go.
Xanathar is a card, and Strixhaven is coming out soon, as well as a bunch of others that have already been released for the Magic the Gathering world. Which personally, to me, I didn't even know was a real thing. I just always played the card game,
Yeah.
knowing that there's an actual story base behind it, and I was kind of like, whoa, that's nifty to hear and understand. Phase, what is it? Plane shifters, plane walkers, yeah, those things. Um, those types of creatures, like you don't think about those in the D&D world, but they've been out for years. Um, they were out in third edition. We just didn't call them that.
And it makes sense too because like D&D exists in a multiverse, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got the Forgotten Realms, but then you can also go to Eberron and all these other places, right? Which have their own settings, and I think that's really cool and going to be a really interesting thing to see with the Great Silver Worms.
Yeah. Oh,
I
so
I
you want to get into that conversation and see what everybody thinks about this one?
oh,
Because
we got
I know you're pulling at the teeth on this thing, but the idea that dragons will have echoes of themselves, there will be, as you get stronger dragons, you're talking ancient worm and above, they'll now have these fragments that all connect to each other. So if something had happened to one of the the smaller dragons, let's say it was a young dragon. Well, maybe it wasn't a young dragon. Maybe it was just an echo of a larger dragon, and now that dragon knows that you just destroyed its lair. Um, that can do some crazy role playing things happening in a very quick manner. That can
oh
be
yeah.
way out of um, the player's knowledge, 100%.
You can write a whole campaign around that. Have you ever seen Jet Li's The One?
Yeah,
So that, right? Like the idea is like, you take down the one and the power separates between the
right.
two. Like that's really cool. And then another talk that's going around is the idea that if all these echoes meet in the same realm, they can combine and form like an omnipotent being, like a god-like
Yeah,
dragon. And that sounds great to me. That
yeah.
sounds like it should be a higher rating than a Trask. Like really, really.
Yeah,
Like
no, I
I
completely
feel like
agree.
this should look at a Trask like a mosquito. Like that's how I picture that because a Trask is this big mindless creature, right?
Right.
It's not like how they describe dragons, and like dragons can be very very intelligent, very wise, and it's what adds so much depth to their being, to what they
Right.
are, and it makes them so great. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's really exciting, and that's not all though. There's lots of stuff coming out with this book that's just insane, and I
Yeah.
can't wait to see
So,
it.
things that you guys will be able to start using in your campaigns pretty much immediately are going to be the new effects for regional effects, the layer actions. They're releasing tables for personalities for dragons as well as horde tables. Um, these are these are things that would be super easy to implement at any table. and you're going to see that ability to customize it the way you want it. One thing I read about today that I was like, you've got to be kidding me. They're thinking all the way down to this point is how is a dragon egg formed? I was lost when somebody told me, they're like, oh, well, it's not just hatched or, you know, a council of dragons have to come together to harness the energy to make an egg. And I was like, well, that's nifty. But the interesting thing is they don't want you to have one reason, way or another. They want to give you five or six different ideas and then say, hey, you take one, two, or three, or you take one and three, and then you build it the way you want to do it. Well, how does it work
Pic-
in your world?
Picture this for an adventure. A council of dragons are gathering to create an egg, and you and your party have to guard them. During this process, say the process is strenuous and requires a great deal of focus. So while this council is coming together and creating this egg, they are defenseless.
Correct.
See that
Now
that
that is a
like
story. Now
oh
that is a story right there. Because now you've got to wonder. So with that kind of massive amount of energy coming in, what is it? What is it connect? What is feeling that right?
mm,
Especially now with this new idea that the regional effects can be ex- extended. So a young dragon's regional effect would look much differently from a ancient dragon's, or a full blown ancient worm,
I
and
would
vice
even have it
versa.
I would even have it so like in the area that maybe that's a temple in a cave or something to that
Hmm.
effect. That they would have this ceremony. I could picture it like this area, this mountain, or wherever they are, is completely surrounded by a wild magic storm, just because the collection of all this energy has caused this event. I think that'd be so cool.
Oh
I
yeah,
might just turn that into a thing. I might do that.
no,
I
that's
think I have it
definitely
ready to
no. So there's and this kind of goes back to the whole homebrew style of things, but the company that I've worked around with and have been around for a couple years now, GUI Cube has released how a specific dragon, a two-headed dragon, was created, and the logic and the understanding behind it really goes to be practical. And I think that's the cool thing about dragons is you can almost make them practical and yet at the same time mythic. And I think that's the really cool thing about what a dragon is, because without that, they're just a monster. But once
yeah.
they have that practicality and once they have that omnipotence added together to them, they're now something much, much more feared, much more respected. And a lot of times, even when I was reading in Fizban's stuff, they're saying that they want people to see that this can have astronomical effects for killing a dragon. We're not talking just, he's slain, the area is now starting to corrupt. No, this can have legitimately effects that can corrupt or change your entirety of your campaign. And that to me is frightening on its own that they're giving that kind of mental preparation for campaigns to be ran like that, because that's going to be a lot of intensity to be uh, spoken about.
I
So
plus they're doing like 20 types of dragons
that's
in
what I
this
was
book.
gonna. That's what I was gonna talk about. So these are just ideas, things we think are gonna come out. We have no idea what's gonna come out. And throw out your ideas on these things, because these things are some pretty crazy, and they're definitely diving back into some of the old school books to pull some of these ideas. So of course you're going to get your five gem dragons, which has already been talked about many many times. We've seen the sapphire already in one of the books. Um, we're going to get back, of course. We're going to see new ways to implement the chromatic and the metallic dragons and how they function, and different personality traits for each of those. But there's also talk of more um, things like, if anybody is a huge Illithid fan, the Elder Brain Dragon is talked about. So, of course, that's going to be an interesting change for people. If anybody has ever heard of an Illithid dragon, it is the most scariest thing I think I have ever had to fight. And I did this with a homebrew version of this, but it was frightening as all get up.
I just heard of this tonight, and if they come out with one, I guarantee you I'll be using it.
Yeah, this thing is frightening.
Beautiful.
Yeah, aquatic
Elephant,
style.
dragon, that's scary.
Crystals, of course, maybe some non-scaled creature, more reptiles, possibly skinned like a catfish and more aquatic based. Yeah, it's possible. They're talking about a dragon-sized mimic. I'm like, oh god, because mimics have to be everything, right? That's what everybody wants is a dragon horde-sized mimic.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I can just think of that as a treasure dragon. Truthfully, I mean the dragon's just covered in treasure. Uh, the Draco Hydra, which if we take about it, it's just a large version of the Hydra. That one I'm not as excited about. It'll be neat, see what it does, but we'll see where that goes. And then of course they're talking about the Deep Dragons and the Moonstone Dragons. So the Moonstone Dragons are going to be their link to, of course, the new Feywild book. Deep Dragons are probably going to be either Abyssal of some sort or Shadow. There is a Shadow Dragon that's been out before, but that was only a one-time deal, and they haven't shown anything since. So I think the main thing they're really focusing on this is giving the game master a lot more tools to put dragons into their world and make them make sense. Which is, the biggest thing we want is to have things make sense when we throw them into our world. We don't want it to just break our world just because we want a dragon in our game. Um,
I think it'd be kind of cool to take a look at everything they will release in the wild beyond the Witchlight and Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and kind of like try to find a connection in there to make a campaign
between the two,
around that, between the two, especially if you can involve echoes
yeah.
into it, right? Because with the Witchlight book, you're already dealing with dimensional multiverse weirdness,
Mm-hmm.
even in how they're mentioning, like we talked about the roller coaster from the D&D animated
Right, and then you've
series.
got the domains of delight, which could be multiple. Um, yeah, no, these are really interesting ideas that they're going to be bringing out, and I think what they're doing is they're starting to see that people are definitely homebrewing way more than before. They're not just grabbing a module and running it anymore. They're putting their spin on it, and people are just getting those extra benefits now from these books rather than us having to try to
Yeah,
figure it
that's
out
right.
ourselves.
That's right, Wizards. All us DMs are doing all the heavy lifting for you now.
That's right.
Congratulations.
You made the goal. But the
Yeah.
way they set this up so far, from what I've read, is it's 1/3 of it's going to be stats for new monsters and how to stat monsters. Third of it's going to be for DMs, which we've talked a lot about tonight already, and then a third of it's going to be for all the players. We're supposed to be getting new races, new subclasses,
And
new
spells.
feats, new spells, and new magic items. Like
Mm.
so,
I like I like have you looked at some of the spells and stuff that they already have on the Unearth Arcana? Because this is usually like the source for
right?
most things that they add into their actual books. And I'm looking at these spells, and like they're high level spells, but
Yeah,
they're so cool.
yeah. So
I
spells, the new subclasses, the Drac Warden Ranger, the Ascendant Dragon Monk. They're talking about remaking the Dragon Sorceress, giving her more dragon-like spells.
Mhm.
Um, Magic items, of course, and then the other cool thing they're talking to do is kind of like the same way they did in the DM's guide, where you can there's a table and it'll build your dragon's horde, um, which dragon hordes are huge sometimes, but it'll give you kind of some parameters to use based on the size of the age of the dragon, and different things like that. So, as well as the characteristics based behind the horde. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen this. It's definitely on Instagram somewhere. I'd have to look and see who put it up there, but they're like obscure versions of hordes for dragons. Like one person was just like it's just a bunch of books, because he just hoards hoards knowledge. So it's just a dragon
And
that lives in a library. Takes over an ancient library.
Which makes perfect sense because if
Right,
you actually like go through what they already have for dragons, they tell you, you know, this dragon covets riches.
right.
This dragon covets people, or this one's into stories. Like
Hmm.
that makes sense. And I think a personal like a chart for making like personalized hordes is just natural progression.
Yeah, I do agree. So, what is everybody else excited about for this, or what would you guys like to hear about? Maybe how we can any ideas or anything we can do to help you in your games as we progress tonight. We're only about halfway through the night, and we've burned through a lot of information already.
Well, that's because at this point, all we can really do is speculate.
Speculate, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great because it's fun to, you know, we're DMs. We usually just let
Right.
our imaginations run rampant
Yeah,
anyway.
so I'm really curious to see how close that the first world and the role that Bahamut and Tiamat play in the creation of and destruction of their world goes
Oh yeah,
very close to the way I ran my campaign 3 years ago when I made Bahamut and Tiamat demigods, or well, gods at the time. So I'm curious to see what it changes. Probably using dragon
yeah.
names.
I
Makes
was
no
I
sense.
was looking forward to hearing you talk a little bit about that because when I was reading up on it, I was like, that sounds really, yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Um,
so the best way I've done is, properly using dragons, making them seem. You want to know if a dragon is known, it needs to be known throughout the area. You can't let the first time they see the dragon be when they find the dragon, and that's partially because you want to make that imp, uh, um, that reverence. You want to make people know what's going on around them. And if there's a dragon flying around, you're not going to be the first person to find out. It's going to be the villager who's been in that area for the last 20 years who runs into his hovel every time they see a massive dragon that flies over the head, right? So
to see a beggar outside covered.
you have to tell those stories to make them feel that way.
Mm,
If you're like I said, if the first time you're meeting a dragon is in the cave, um, you've done something wrong personally
yes.
because you're not giving those players that influence that push to build that story because dragons are always about the story. It's always about the massiveness of who they are and what they control and who they control. So if you're not giving those hints away, then the dragon no longer has that power that you want
Yeah.
it to have.
Well, because there's so much in their stats, right?
Right.
The ability to take on a human form or
Right.
any form they really choose. I mean, like I've told you before, my players have already talked to a dragon a couple of times.
You know.
They don't know that, but they did.
Right.
Uh, so it's just it's one of those things. Like these characters can be really influential. Like I remember reading lore on dragons that like some of them can fall in love with a human and then that human would then pass and years down the road a descendant of that person, that dragon can be like, I recognize this person, and they can become attached to that person
Right.
through that connection because just like there's so much depth to dragons, and I think that's what makes them probably one of the better creatures that D&D has, which makes sense because you know Dungeons and Dragons,
Well, not to
right?
mention you have to think of how. So let's take the game away from it, right? And let's go back to what mythology says about dragons. There's so much. Nobody's ever seen a dragon, and yet you know so much about a dragon, right?
Mhm.
I will say I was 13 years old when I saw this. Do not judge me on this. I thought dragons were real after I watched this dang documentary. I was pissed. Um, so there's a documentary out there that I think National Geographic did called Walking with Dragons. I only stepped into it like 20 minutes after that showed, so I didn't get to see the full intro that was like, this is just out of figment imagination and all that crap. So I'm walking into this idea, and they're pulling off like, how did they mate? How did they survive? Where were they living? Like, and I'm just sitting there just eating this all up. And then, of course, at the end, I'm bawling my eyes out because they're like, remember, this is all just a figment of our, this is all
Uh,
based on story. And I was like, You've got to be fucking kidding. I was like, I was so mad. Sorry for the f bomb there, but man, I
Yeah,
was so angry, so
that's
angry.
all right.
Um,
That's all right.
and those are the things that, like I said, we've talked about dragons for to explain phenomenal for hundreds and hundreds of years, and why not do the same thing and make sure that your players see the same thing in your story. That's the
Yeah, you
way a
can.
dragon makes his mark.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like you can look through all kinds of cultures and find mythology on dragons or dragon-esque creatures and almost everything.
Yeah.
Um, so
So you
hey,
want to
who knows?
make that bold, depending on how big of a dragon you want to throw at somebody, you want to make that bold statement and you want to make it shown to your players multiple times because that's going to give that respect that a dragon deserves. It's the best way to
I
put it.
I would definitely like to do something with a dragon just because of how their lore is built, where the players go to like a library or some kind of museum of
Mm-hmm.
some sort where they see all these artworks of great battles led
Later on, Youth
by
Host. Have a
great
good one.
led by all these great leaders, and each one's different. But maybe one of the players just so happens to notice that there's a similarity between each and every one of these people. And dragons can live for so long, so they would
Right.
come up with a point that's like this person with that same ring in
Yeah.
all of these logs.
Right.
I met somebody with that ring like a week ago.
Right.
What's going on here? Like, there's so much you could do because, like, a dragon, the way that they live forever, they're sentient. They can develop relationships with humanoids and mortals. You can do anything. Like a
Yeah.
dragon, like you can have a dragon be like the major, like you can have all these figures in your
Yeah.
lore throughout the history of your world, and they could all just be the same dragon,
Correct.
right? There's so much you can do with
Yeah.
them, and
So
it's
like
like,
my
oh,
like in my original story, every one of the main kingdoms was ruled by a dragon, but they were ruled by a metallic dragon, which then they had the respect from those people. Um, and it was kind of the chaos versus or the chromatic versus the metallic on the idea behind it, and the players were trying to keep what they had built as a wall up from the chromatic dragons entering into the area that was considered safe, their safe haven. And then once that was broken, that's when the story kind of kicked off.
mhm.
Um, but the idea was is that the gold dragon was the king of the main of the capital, and he had never been seen in his draconic form. He had only been known as a high elf of about 40 years old who has never aged in hundreds of years. Now, of course, he took an elven form because elves don't age very fast either, but they only the top elders knew, and then there was story behind it that he was one of the few. Now, with me personally, if I'm running dragons in my series, I'm not putting a ton of them in. Normally, the
Y-
way that this story was is there were true dragons and then there were drakes. Now, I specify those differently between you are sentient or you are just a monstrous creature. Um, and that was before I knew that they were coming out with the ideas already, which kind of irritated me. But no,
They're watching you.
dude, I'm telling you, Big Brother is out there, and it's not just the military. It's not just the
Hey man,
government. Wizards of the Coast, anything you plug in, it's definitely they're checking
yeah.
it out. But at the same time, I just thought it was really nifty, and it's something I've always wanted to explore. Was you know these creatures are not just big monsters. They've got intelligence to them. They've got sentience behind them. They have a goal normally, um, and that's I think the scariest part about it. Right, so you start breaking into the social and the political aspects of life with a dragon because you're like, okay,
Mhm.
dude's the size of a mountain, but he's got the same intelligence as a high level advisor. So somebody like a blue dragon or a green dragon who likes more of the loyalty behind it, they're gonna sit maybe as the advisor to the king in the background.
Yeah,
Making
sure.
sure that his manipulation is sticking true forward. And and then if for some reason somebody denies him, oh wait, they disappear one night. Well, what happened? Well, the dragon probably just swooped down, stole him, ate him. But this is this
Um,
keeps him in authority as the advisor of the king in that side here. So
and I also think how you figure out how dragons fit in your world can also be a really good
mhm.
way to lean into now another subject that is in the Fizzband's Treasury of Dragons is the two new subclasses.
Yes,
Now, that can
and we don't know if
definitely
that's the only ones either. Those are the two that they've
yes.
noticed. So the Draken Warden or the Drake Warden Ranger, and then the Ascendant Dragon Monk. Now, there's always been a Draconic Sorcerer, so that's another one that will definitely be touched or at least looked at,
Expanded on. Yeah.
expanded on. But I don't think it's going to really give us anything new with that subclass.
Not likely. They might try to find ways to add a little bit more of the gem dragons in
Right? Yeah.
flavor to that, which is what they're doing with the dragonborn races as well.
Right.
Now they're going to be adding to that. But when you're thinking of the dragons and you're thinking how they fit in your world and fit in your campaign, like when you think of the ranger dragon, like what's the basic story for all rangers? Well, they came across this creature through circumstance, and now
Yep.
that's their favorite creature.
Yeah.
That creature's favorite terrain is now your favorite terrain. um so like there's so many things you can really do with that. Like this ranger was attacked by the your generic story. It was attacked by an ancient dragon, but maybe there's a little more depth as to why that dragon attacked, and that's something you could tackle in your campaign. Or you can look at the monk class and kind of go off of, well, maybe this is a monastery that worships, say, the great silver worm.
Mm-hmm.
They worship the great silver worm, and you can add a lot of flavor with that. And I really want to see what they're going to be doing with these. For me, particularly the monk. Monk is probably my all-time favorite class. Very, very simple, very broken. God, I love Stunning Strike. But yeah.
Yeah, so just reading up on that a little bit because I haven't had a chance to read up on the subclass because a lot of the stuff we talk about, of course, is being as a game master, and sometimes you don't get that chance to always look at all the subclasses, right? Um,
Mhm.
so the crazy thing, so I did not realize this, and this is going to appear in one of my games here soon. I guarantee it because this is freaking awesome. But the new Ranger class, actually, you have a connection with a dragon or a drake, and this allows you to summon it to their side to share an awe-inspiring power. So you're giving me a tiny dragon. Like first off, you're nuts because now you've given me the power. Because you've also given me now the ability to write quests out to change this drake from a small little tiny drake to a full blown. Which, if anybody's been around since third edition, which a lot of people have, they used to have the dragon riders, the purple worms knights, who they shrunk down what they could do in this version of D&D in fifth edition. But they used to actually you could get your steed was a dragon, which is amazing. So that's what I
Oh,
loved. I had a
yeah.
paladin who had to fight for that one. He was like, "No, I will be this."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
um,
And I think, like, when I think of that, do you remember Dragonheart?
oh yeah,
So, Buddy from that movie, is he not a dragon ranger?
yeah. Pretty much is what they're pulling
Right?
for. Yeah, so it's a smaller version, of course, than what he would be, but the ability to, because here's the other thing people don't realize is like let's get a wizard added into this, right? So then you start throwing in large, time like in large spells on people to make the small dragon now a medium dragon. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
And like, because one of the spells they have in UA is the summon draconic spirit.
yeah,
So I could definitely see that. Like rangers aren't primarily spellcasters, of course, but they do
Right.
have a spell list.
They do.
Um,
Um, they also, the other thing I just read through, and the crazy thing is they do grow. So as your ranger grows, your drake grows. So once you actually hit level 15, your drake goes to a large rather than a small. Now I don't
oh
know.
yeah.
I don't see anywhere in here that says it grows to a medium, but they do
So
get
for
bigger.
the summon draconic spirit, just and this is just the UA, right?
Yeah.
So subject to change. You're a large dragon. So your draconic spirit is large. So if that's still the same thing,
Where are you seeing this
and
at? Is
somebody
this
can,
on UA?
that's what I said. This is specifically this
Okay,
is
so
UA.
it looks like
So
they've
we,
altered it a little bit on the UA on D&D Beyond, which I'm guaranteeing is probably a little closer to Fizban's.
which it might be. So if you're saying
So it's a Drake
enlarge,
companion, small Drake
it's a
companion.
it's a in the UA it's large.
Jesus, that's frightening.
So
Amazing,
I
but
cast
frightening.
enlarge reduce.
Yep, and now I have a
He's a
huge.
huge.
Yep, now I have an oversized dragon. Now I have a dragon that's actually
Woo!
fearful, right? Um,
Um, armor class 14
yep,
plus the level of the spell.
yep.
Natural armor. Hit points 50 plus 10 for each spell level above the fifth. 30 feet of flying speed.
Yep.
80 feet of swim, and then basic 30 feet. Then strength 19, so a plus 4. Dex 14 plus 2. Con 17 plus 3. Intelligence 10 plus 0. Wisdom 14 plus 2. Charisma 14 plus 2. Jesus. Um,
Yeah, no, it's
so
definitely a.
damage resistance, chromatic, metallic only, acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison. Damage resistance, gem only, force, necrotic, psychic, radiant, thunder.
Mm.
Condition immunities, charmed, frightened, poison, sense, blind sight, 30 feet, dark vision, 50 feet, passive perception, 12. Languages, draconic, understands the language you speak. Challenge, performance bonus equals your bonus. Shared resistance, when you summon the dragon, choose one of its damage resistance. You have resistance to the damage type until the spell ends.
Yeah,
And
so
that's not even its actions.
right, so that's where, like I said, we definitely have to see what is going to actually be in Fizbins and what's going to be shown,
Cat.
yeah,
Yeah.
as UA, because they definitely threw a overpowered version of the Ranger, though the Ranger gets a lot of flack. So seeing him as a much powerfuler character kind of gives me a little bit of hope for
Mhm.
the Ranger class
Well,
one day.
this is now what I just told you was just the stats for the summon draconic spirit spell.
Okay, so the Summon Draconic Spirit spell is probably different. So
Yeah,
Summon
that's what
Draconic
I was
Spirit is
just.
probably just a actual spell that you can
Yes.
cast. Um,
Yeah, so basically what I was saying is that I could see that being a spell that will be a part of that particular ranger's list.
oh,
And
I
that's basically
don't.
what I was reading was the stats for the
I'm
draconic
pretty
spirit.
sure it's not going to be, but we can see. It's probably gonna be for a
Well, yeah,
higher level mage of some sort, sorcerer, wizard.
more than likely. Like in the UA, it's classed as a fifth level conjuration, right? So,
Yeah, so fifth level, so you're at least pushing at least eighth, ninth. So you're
mm,
not seeing that thing until it's needed to see it. Is the main focus that they're trying to play. But
yes,
for this, you do get a Drake companion at level 3 as a Draken Warden Ranger,
yes,
which still starts at a plus 14 plus your proficiency bonus for armor class. So that proficiency bonus at a level 3 still could still have a good 17 AC as a
yep.
level 3. So can't really complain too much on that one. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing that I kind of noticed is with everything that they've been adding over time, especially with everything that Tasha's introduced, is you can take those CR charts, just throw them out the window. Maybe use them as a slight reference guide to be like, I have this party. The CR suggested is a level 4 or CR 4 creature for this amount of people. Okay, well, don't pick the 4, pick the 5. And then if you see things getting a little OP in favor of the creature you're presenting, maybe don't use an ability or two that the creature has.
Yeah, you don't have to always go OP. So, um, one thing people have to really think about with stuff like this, especially for creatures that go into higher levels, is make sure your party is not in what they call Nova state, right? So they've just rested. They know that they're going to rest as soon as they're done with this battle, and it's just a one and gun, just death stomp. Because you could give a CR level 6 to a group of party of level 4, and guess what? They're going to wipe the floor with that dude because there's 4 of them. There's only one of him,
Mm,
and they are fully rested. So they're going to just throw every massive spell they've got. Now, if they don't know that they're going to rest next, they might be a little cautious, but they're still, if they're starting to see that they're weakening, they're not going to play around and they're just going to wipe it. So,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
uh, yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? That's a good question, though. Last week, we had a lot of good questions on monsters. Got a quiet group.
Everybody
We
loves
got a ton of
monsters.
people in here. Nobody's got any
They're just
questions.
quiet.
They're just quiet. Everybody's quiet.
That's all right. That's all
It's okay.
right. Yeah. So, like we said, this book's got a lot going on. I think for myself, one of the biggest things is, like, of course, I said to you, the silver worm. That's mind blown, and lore. I love lore.
Yeah.
Like, I like to create my own lore, but that doesn't mean, it's not nice to read
Yeah.
something new.
What's
I would.
drawing from the lore, right? It's not taking it
Mhm,
for its own, but it's pulling aspects of it that make sense in your own world. And that's
exactly.
something that people definitely need to make sure that they're looking at, is that you don't always have to just pull the lore and be like, this is what it is. No, it doesn't work like that.
Mhm.
This is your world.
Absolutely.
Make sure you make it
Absolutely.
feel good to you and your players. Um, oh, one thing we didn't talk about, of course, is not only are we getting dragon layers, we are actually getting the maps for some of those layers. So, and that is
Right.
being done by the incredible Dyson logo map maker, who's done quite a bit of D&D stuff. He's an incredible artist. I've used multiple things of his. Um, and of course, we are getting the Draconic Ancestry options for Dragonborn, as well as the Dragonborn Gem Dragon versions, and as well as, I guess, we're getting some new feats as well as spells. So
Yes.
there's a lot of stuff that's coming out in this book, and they really wanted, I think, kind of split it up so that everybody has something they can use that connects to them to dragons. But really, this is just, I think, the direction that Dungeons and Dragons is heading. That people are seeing, they're seeing a trend with every new book that comes out. There's more of a trend of how do we build it into their own world, into our world, rather than putting it into a world that's already created, which I think is a cool
Mhm.
idea. And they're listening to the community, which is good. Um, yeah, no, this is I think next week. I think next week we're going to talk combat. I think it's something I've been really interested to talking about. How do you make combat exciting? And something that I love doing, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit, is how do you make death interesting?
Oh
So
yeah.
I think we'll do combat and death, maybe just death. I don't know. We'll probably talk an hour on death alone. Um, and
Oh yeah, man. With the Ravenloft book,
yeah,
with all those little, like, you can get, like, you can get a symbiote. You can pretty much be Venom,
right, yeah.
right?
So we're not strictly going to talk Ravenloft. We're going to more talk how do you make death interesting in a campaign.
Yeah.
And this is how do you make it interesting to the point where it's not monotonous. How do you maybe spice up ideas for it? And this is going to pull from a lot of Instagram and TikTokers and all that stuff that we see on the interwebs, and kind of pull this all together and kind of come up with our own tabletop misfits version of how we would play dying in a campaign.
Hmm.
Because the sad thing is, and most people need to realize this is, and this is what we're going to call this for the evening, is that dying in a campaign doesn't always have to be bad, and it can be an extremely exciting and emotional portion of a game that can bring a lot of storytelling to its to the forefront.
Oh, I've even heard of players throwing funerals for dead PCs.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
little
like
much in my opinion, but you do you. So, and I think what it is though is that we've all realized that D&D is much more than just a game for most of us. It's a way to connect to a world that we would love to see. It's a way for us to experience our creative sides, and it's a way to see and to experience things with friends that you wouldn't be able to do any other way than through a tabletop game. So, um,
yes,
before I start
I was
crying and getting all emotional, please raise your glasses. We'll take our final shout
gonna
outs
know that.
tonight. I'm going to drink my water tonight. I've got to do stuff in the morning, so I can't be drinking.
You're the designated driver
I'm the
tonight.
designated driver tonight. You're right. Um,
You're manning the carriage.
I
That's
am.
your job.
I am manning the cart as we all head out of the tavern tonight. Do you have any final words for our audience, Chris?
Just take this stuff and do your own thing and have fun, because that's the most important part of this game, right? Is having fun and telling stories with your friends. And if you can have a couple of drinks on the go as well, that's all
Right.
the better for you.
Fantastic. So with that, like I said before, clink your glasses. Come back and see us next week in the tavern. Hopefully, we'll have some more guests next week, where we will talk about combat and death and how to make it exciting. Because since D&D is about 90% combat in its rules, you got to kind of figure out how to make that exciting, because that can be
Absolutely.
extremely boring. So
Yeah.
we'll see you guys all next week. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next Thursday.
Look forward to it. Take care, guys.